All right, so as we all know now, on the 21st, next week, the next banner that is coming out is one of the best support characters in the game. It is going to be Yaga, and then the week after that, for the final banner of February, we are going to get Saki. Honestly, I didn't see this coming originally, as I talked about in my previous video. It did surprise me. I thought they were going to do a little bit of a different order. If we were following the JP timeline, it would have been Miwa next, then Saki, then Yaga. Obviously, we were never going to exactly follow the JP timeline, but I thought if they were going to skip any character, they were going to skip Yaga and keep Miwa in, you know, because Yaga has the potential to make people spend cubes. Like, I myself will definitely be spending to get Yaga because he's one of the best support characters. It makes sense to save him until right before the half anniversary, right, to get people to spend some of their cubes. That way then they have to spend on the half anniversary. I don't know what they're thinking with the way they release banners, but this is good for us because this does mean we get one of the best supports in the game sooner, so this is really good. Now, should you be summoning on these banners? Well, maybe, but keep in mind, like, these two characters in particular now are no longer going to be on the standard banner update, so we're finally out of all those characters that are going to be added to the standard banner. So previously this month we had Mechamaru, we had Red Panda. You should not have summoned for either of those because standard banner update is coming very soon, and they're going to be added to that banner. These characters will not, so these characters, it's actually not a bad idea to pull for, because if you don't get them now, you're going to be waiting a while. So we need to talk about their kits and kind of where they land on the tier list, and if they're actually worth pulling for what they do, and if you're going to use them more than characters you already have. So we're going to start with Yaga because he is the first banner coming out. So this Yaga is a support type unit. He is one of, like I said, the best support units in the game. He does not have a black flash. He doesn't need it though because he's not a damage character. His skill 1 is called Discipline. It deals 120% melee taijutsu damage to the selected enemy and decreases the enemy's critical hit resistance by 10%. This can be really good if you're trying to land crits because you can stack it twice and get a 20% lowered crit hit resist, and this is going to allow like your attacker to land the crit that you want them to land. However, if you do use the skill twice in a row, of course you're trading out the damage buff skill that he has on his skill 3 in order to give extra critical hit rate, so it's kind of a catch-22. We need something that like lowers crit resist and also buffs damage. That's what we need. That'd be really broken. But I really like this new update on the wiki where they talk about the different stats for each move. So for this particular move, it has a critical hit rate of 100% and critical damage of 50%. And then of course for the black flash and black flash damage, rate and damage, we're gonna have 0% because he doesn't have a black flash. And that's gonna be the same for all skills for those two particular traits. And then his skill 2 is Go Tsukumato, if I'm saying that right. I'm so sorry if I butcher his moves. His moves are really hard to say. Deals range combined damage equal to 120% taijutsu and 30% jujutsu to the selected enemy. His moves are largely taijutsu moves. And then decreases the selected enemy's taijutsu damage by 35% for 1 turn. Honestly, it's an okay skill. It's not my favorite. Decreasing taijutsu damage by 35% for 1 turn is kind of a niche thing. It can be used in the right circumstance, but I don't think it's super crazy. Has a critical hit rate of 60% and does 50% critical damage. The one thing I will say though, the cursed energy cost is pretty good. 10 is a nice low cursed energy cost. And then his skill 3 is Your Turn Mokyu Burapan. See, I can't say these. Hopefully that was right. If not, well, I'm sorry. So deals 100% taijutsu damage to the selected enemy, inflicts darkness status on the selected enemy with a 65% chance for 1 turn. At level 10, that percentage does go up. Same thing for the boost in damage right here. So increases the selected enemy's taijutsu and jujutsu damage by 18.3% for 3 turns. At level 10, that goes up to 30%. That's a pretty good buff. Now keep in mind though, SR Yaga does a buff for 4 turns, so that's why like SR Yaga is still kind of the GOAT to this day. But then we also get the additional buff for yellow type effective for yellow type attacks of 10% added onto the 18%, or at level 10 it goes from 30% to 46%, right? So it can be a 46% buff essentially stacking for yellow type attacks, and it can be really solid. This would be a character who would be good to run with like potentially hidden inventory Gojo. And then deals range combined damage equal to 100% taijutsu and 100% jujutsu for 2 hits. These characters or his like dolls will ignore darkness when attacking. I'm not even going to try to say the names again. And then critical hit rates, you have a 20% chance on the first hit, 40% chance on the second and third hit, and critical damage is a 50% crit damage on all hits. And then his ultimate, Thorough Discipline Kathy. At least I can say Kathy, right? That one's easy. Deals ranged combined damage equal to 600% taijutsu and 180% jujutsu to all enemies for 6 hits. When you go up, it's actually quite a bit of damage for a support character. It's really not too bad. Increases all taijutsu damage received by 30.4% for 4 turns. Increases all jujutsu damage received by 30% for 4 turns. And if we go to level 10, it's a 51% increase in damage. Stack that with your skill 3, and that can allow for some pretty good damage overall, right? Effective for yellow type attacks though. Increases all damage by 18.3% for 4 turns. Excludes self. Kathy ignores darkness status when attacking, so even more damage increase, which is really good. So just basically a ton of damage increase. One of the best supporters in the game. I think you'll use him quite a bit. I think he will be one of your guys' main support units that you run. And then so on the skill, critical hit rate of 30% on the 1st through 5th hit, because remember it's 6 hits. On the 6th hit, it is a 60% crit rate, and then it's 50% crit damage for all hits. Now he does have an auto skill, Educational Principles. At the start of each turn, increases all allies taijutsu damage by 46% for 1 turn, increases all allies jujutsu damage by 46% for 1 turn. So I mean, when you couple that with the buffs that he gives, he's looking pretty damn good, right? Like, this makes the character. So Yaga is insanely good. Definitely worth running. A very good support unit, and I think a lot of people are going to want him. If you stuck around through the reading of that whole kit, like, I hope you can see the value. Like, you should want this character. He is insanely good, and it makes me regret a little bit that I just bought and spent cubes on Red Panda when he's going to be added to the standard banner. I do it so you guys don't have to though, but like, man, that was a dumb decision. Next up we have Saki. Saki is going to be an attacker type unit. Not the best attacker type unit, I'm not going to lie to you, but does not have a black flash as an attacker unit, which is crazy. Characteristic, at the start of each turn, and if own HP is 35% or below, increases own taijutsu and jujutsu damage by 180% for 1 turn. The catch is being below 35% HP. Like, if it was a little bit higher, I'd be happy with this, because then she would be halfway decent, but that's a little bit too low. It makes it hard to use a character like that. Skill 1, I'll blow you away. Deals melee combined damage equal to 75% taijutsu and 70% jujutsu to the selected enemy. Critical hit rate of 40 and critical damage of 50. Skill 2, don't get carried away. Costs 15 cursed energy, which is already not great. Yaga's was 10, right? Deals melee combined damage equal to 140% taijutsu and 110% jujutsu to the selected enemy. Increases own taijutsu damage by 10% for 3 turns. Like, that's okay, but like, we're splitting the percentages between taijutsu and jujutsu, so buffing just taijutsu damage is like, I wish it buffed both. If it buffed both, I think it would be a lot better. At level 10, obviously, the percentages go up right there. If your own HP is 35% or above, she will sacrifice her own HP to use this skill, so that'll help you get down to your 35%, I guess. Critical hit rate of 40, critical damage of 50%. Her skill 3 is Disaster Transferal, 25 cursed energy to use this skill. Deals melee combined damage equal to 110% taijutsu and 95% jujutsu to all enemies, so it is an AoE. The lower your HP is, the greater the damage buff, but only up to 40%. I would have liked to see a little bit higher percentage. And fills own ultimate skill gauge by 250. Filling your own ultimate skill gauge by 250 is really good. That's probably this is one of her better moves, but it just cost I would say a decent amount, like a little bit too much there. And then her critical hit rate is 40%, critical damage is 50% on that skill. Her ultimate, Fist of Resolve, deals melee combined damage equal to 320% taijutsu and 290% jujutsu to the selected enemy. The lower your own HP is, the greater the damage boost, up to 40%. So once again, there's your 40%, and like I said, it's so weird up above that she's only buffing taijutsu on herself when she's doing split damage. Like, this is, I like when a character has both taijutsu and jujutsu, because some enemies will be resistant to one or the other, so that means this character can be effective no matter what, which is good. but also when you're only buffing one of those attributes, it feels like you're losing a little bit of value there. So critical, whereas like if you were to buff someone who, let me explain a little bit further. If you were to buff someone like Gojo, who has just straight Jujutsu, and you buff Jujutsu, it's a bigger percentage, so he's getting more damage overall. But anyways, going back to this, critical hit rate of 40%, critical damage of 50% right there. And then for the auto skill, look at this. Look at this beast. Okay, so her auto skill able body at the start of the battle grants revival status to self one time, so she does get that revival, especially since you're playing below 35% HP with this character most of the time if you can. The biggest problem with the character is you have to wait to get below 35% HP for her to actually become like really good. At the start of each turn, if own HP is 60% or below, decreases the damage received by 10% for one turn. And then the lower your HP is, the greater the damage reduction, up to 40%. And then additionally, at the start of each turn, if your own HP is 35% or below, decreases own damage received by 50% for 3 turns. So every single turn, it'll check this, right? And if you're below 35% HP, she gets that 50% damage reduction for 3 turns, meaning you can stack damage reduction, which could be really solid. So it's weird because she's an attack type character that's really tanky if you get her below a certain amount of HP. So it is the biggest problem here is it's 50% damage reduction as soon as you hit 35%. So if you hit 35% and then you get that 50% damage reduction and then they happen to attack you that same turn, 50% damage reduction might not be enough still to keep you alive. So you need to make it like at least 2 turns while being under 35% HP before this like damage reduction actually kicks in and actually is like super useful for her. And then when the character triggers, the revival status grants attack nullification to self for 1 turn, which is good as well. So that means you won't die immediately upon being revived, which is solid. So she's a really weird character because she's designed to have damage, but then also like her whole auto skill is tanking. So I don't know how to feel about her. I feel like she'll be interesting. She's a very niche character. I feel like she has her uses. The tanking is okay, but like keep in mind she can't draw aggro or anything like that. So the damage reduction it's all right, but like if she's not protecting your other characters, how useful really is it? So keep that in mind. Now we're going to take a look at both the global JP tier list and the JP tier list made by the JP players. So the global Japanese version tier list here on the wiki, if we're looking for these characters, right, Saki is actually going to be under damage because remember she's an attacker. So if we start at the top, we have Sukuna at the top, continue down. These are all the characters that are out on JP right now. And we are going to be getting Saki here. She is an A tier. Okay, so that's not the bottom tier. She's still higher than Blue Toto. But I wouldn't call this super spectacular, right? Like even technically, Mechamaru, who gets his buff later, goes up to S+, right? Like Mechamaru is right here right now for global. So she doesn't get that buff in the future, at least not yet. So maybe eventually she'll get buffed. She will get better potentially, but at least right now she's not getting a buff. So how she releases on global is where she's going to stay on JP. So not super great. Okay, so personally, I would skip on her, but that's my opinion. And then if we take a look at the support tab, at the top, of course, you have Gojo, and then you have both Yagas next to each other. So there's your yellow Yaga right next to red SR Yaga. Very, very good support, like I said. And then if we take a look at the JP tier list, they have an all-in-one tier list, so they don't have it split up by categories. So in triple S tier, we have red Yaga because he's literally still just used on every team. He has 4 turns of stacking as well, which is good. We have Sukuna, we have Gojo. Then in double S tier, you have all these characters, and all of these characters are very good. So just because he's not in the top tier of the tier list for the JP tier list doesn't mean he's not good, right? Every single one of these characters is very, very good. Hidden inventory, Gojo, Toji, you guys have used those. Yuta's insanely good. Geto just got buffed on JP, like became insanely good. And Yuta even got buffed too. So like all of these characters really good. So Yaga is very solid. Definitely, I think he's worth tossing a few cubes at. Regardless of if you want to spend cubes though, you are going to get some free multis with tickets. So make sure you guys definitely take advantage of those. But then if we look for Saki in here, Saki is actually going to be a ways down the tier list. And keep in mind, JP only goes down to B tier as well. So here in A tier, you have Saki with Inumaki, Panda, Miguel. I wanted him to be good, but he just wasn't. But yeah, so Saki is down here in A tier, almost the bottom of the tier list. Not a whole lot of uses for her, unfortunately. So when we're talking about the two characters, when we're talking about Saki, and when we're talking about Yaga, out of the two characters, I would recommend, here's my recommendation, I would recommend going for a copy of Yaga. You do not need to get dupes because he is a support character. You don't need the extra damage or anything like that. I mean, the extra HP might be nice, but it's not necessary. So I would go for one copy of Yaga if you can. Like, it's worth spending cubes on. That being said, you might need to save every cube you can for the half anniversary for global, because who knows if we're going to actually get enough cubes to be able to pity a character with the way things have been progressing on global. But I digress on that point. But I do think Yaga is definitely actually worth spending on a little bit, personally, in my opinion. Hopefully you can get him on the ticket so you don't have to worry about it. And as far as Saki goes, I would probably skip on her banner. It feels like a very easy skip. The one bad thing about both of these characters, though, is unlike all the characters we just had, these characters, once again, are not going to be added to the standard pool banner. So if you don't get them now, you are going to have to wait a bit for a rerun to be able to get them in the future. But that is everything for this video. Those are their kits. That's their placements for the tier list. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the video, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. Peace.